The design looked so strange that British gunners shot at the prototype over the channel, mistaking it for an enemy aircraft. Mechanics warned pilots not to fly it. One hard landing in the new Sopwith Dolphin, one noseover on soft ground, and the pilot's exposed head would snap clean off against the upper wing frame. Pilots in every Dolphin squadron begged to be reassigned. Yet soon after its introduction, the fighter that hundreds refused to fly was building a roster of aces. They knew something lesser pilots could never overcome. Since its introduction to the front in 1917, the Sopwith Camel earned its place as one of the most successful fighters of the Great War, racking up more aerial victories than any other Allied aircraft. But that success came with a cost. With the upper wing sitting directly above the pilot's head, blocking his view of the sky above, all he had for visibility was a small window cut into the center section, a gap so inadequate that most pilots took knives to the fabric themselves, carving it wider just to catch a glimpse of an attacker diving from above, a weakness that left everyone vulnerable. No one understood this limitation better than Herbert Smith, the man and designer behind the Camel, who set out to solve the visibility problem with his next design. Smith had a solution: position the pilot high in the airframe, level with the upper wing itself. Build a single-seat fighter that could match the Camel's agility while giving pilots the view they desperately needed. In May, his creation was ready. Designated the 5F1, soon to be named the Dolphin, Sopwith's latest aircraft sat low and compact, barely longer than the Camel. A 200-horsepower Hispano-Suiza engine sat behind a tall frontal radiator, armament mounted directly above it, with the pilot squeezed in immediately behind, positioned in the tightest possible fuselage to keep the mass concentrated for maneuverability. But what made the Dolphin revolutionary was that for the first time in a single-seat fighter, the upper wing sat behind the lower wing, pushed back 13 inches, leaving the entire sky above him open and unobstructed. Now, an enemy diving from above would no longer appear as a sudden shadow, but as a visible threat with seconds to spare. A climb and turn no longer meant flying blind, hoping no one was waiting. The Sopwith Dolphin gave its pilot the view every fighter ace had been demanding since the war began. Still, this radical solution came with a downside. The pilot's head sat directly inside a cage of steel tubing and wooden spars, completely exposed, with nothing to protect him if the aircraft tipped forward on landing. After a series of successful prototype flights with test pilot Harry Hawker, in early June 1917, the Dolphin, despite a series of problems, overheating, a heavy nose, left-turning spine, was cleared for the next stage. On June 13, 1917, with H.G. Tizard at the controls, one of these aircraft took off, bound for Saint-Omer in France, where frontline pilots would fly it in comparison with the SE-5 single-seat fighter. That morning, as pilot Tizard crossed the English Channel at altitude aboard the Dolphin, the French coast appeared through scattered clouds below. Though he'd made this flight countless times, ferrying prototypes and production models to squadrons at the front, this time felt different. The Dolphin's strange backward stagger silhouette and narrow fuselage made it unlike anything else in the sky. As he descended towards Saint-Omer, he began to wonder if anyone on the ground would recognize what they were seeing. His answer came right then, when black puffs erupted around the aircraft as British anti-aircraft gunners opened fire. Stationed along the approach route and trained to shoot at whatever seemed unfamiliar, the Allied men gave Tizard what one observer later called, quote, a rousing welcome of high explosive and shrapnel. Reacting swiftly, pilot Tizard banked hard and pushed the prototype lower, weaving through the barrage as shells burst around him, until the guns finally stopped tracking him across the countryside. Somehow, by the time he touched down at Saint-Omer, the Dolphin was intact. The second prototype was submitted that summer, followed by a third that brought the most significant change: 2 Lewis guns mounted on the upper wing frame, angled upward at 45 degrees, turning the Dolphin into the world's first multi-gun single-seat fighter. Within days, contracts went out for 900 Dolphins, an aircraft that had barely left the test range. But there was one problem. The design relied on the same 200-horsepower Hispano-Suiza engine used in the SE-5A, a fighter already scheduled for mass production, and both aircraft were about to draw from a power plant stockpile Britain could scarcely maintain. Still, production Dolphins began rolling off the line in autumn 1917, and by year's end, 121 had been delivered. With orders still climbing, at last, Britain's newest fighter was heading to war. The Royal Flying Corps' No. 19 Squadron became the first operational unit to receive the Sopwith Dolphin, trading in their spots for the new fighters in January 1918. The squadron would even immortalize the aircraft by placing a cartoon dolphin at the center of its badge, one of only 3 British aircraft in the war to earn such recognition. Right from the get-go, the Dolphin's arrival at the front brought its share of trouble. In the first weeks, several British and Belgian pilots fired on it by mistake, convinced the unfamiliar outline belonged to a German scout. Dolphin crews knew to keep their distance from friendly formations until the silhouette became better known. Soon, another worry arose. The raised cockpit made pilots fear a noseover would snap their necks, and the backward stagger wings brought back uneasy memories. The Airco DH-5 had used a similar layout the year before, with disastrous results. As pilots arrived expecting to fly the proven Camel or reliable SE-5A, they found themselves assigned to an aircraft that looked wrong from every angle. Oliver Stewart, one of the first pilots to sit in a Dolphin cockpit, summed up what nearly every airman felt upon strapping in, quote, "This would be an unpleasant machine in which to turn over on the ground." Within weeks, a rumor tore through every squadron in France. One hard landing aboard the Dolphin, a single noseover on soft ground, and the pilot's exposed head would snap clean off against the upper wing frame. Whether this stemmed from an actual incident, a near miss witnessed by an observer, or simply the design, talk spread faster than any official denial could contain. To top it off, many of the first Dolphins sent to squadrons arrived fitted with defective, locally made Hispano-Suiza engines, plagued by faulty gear wheels that forced ground crews to fly them with warning notes still tucked in the logbooks. Meanwhile, the Lewis guns that had made the Dolphin revolutionary proved more trouble than worth. Mounted on movable brackets and angled upward at 45 degrees, they swung wildly during maneuvers and blocked the pilot's view during critical moments. Most squadrons eventually stripped one gun entirely, abandoning the multi-gun concept that had defined the aircraft's design. With a reputation like this, it seemed impossible the Dolphin would ever prove itself in combat. After No. 79 Squadron began using Dolphins in February, followed by No. 87 and No. 23 in March, the expansion stopped. Scared pilots requested transfers, ground crews whispered warnings, and despite contracts for 900 Dolphins, only 4 squadrons received them. Despite the early confusion and rumors about the model, pilots who actually flew it found it was quick, steady in a climb, and responsive, while its stall had a bite that demanded respect. During a mock dogfight between an SE-5 and a Dolphin, author Cecil Lewis wrote, quote, "Every dodge I've ever learned, I tried on him, but he just sat there on my tail, for all the world as if I'd just been towing him behind me." In no squadron was this clearer than with the No. 87, which became the highest-scoring Dolphin unit of the war, including an incredible streak by Captain Arthur Viggers. Despite starting the war as a signals officer in the trenches, by November 1917, he'd earned his wings and was posted to the 87th Squadron to fly the Sopwith Dolphin. On June 3, 1918, Viggers claimed his first 2 victories, a duo of enemy fighters caught red-handed during a patrol over the lines. By August 10th, he added 3 more in a single day, bringing his total to 5 and earning him ace status. From there, his tally only increased, with 3 more that same month, leading to a promotion to in-flight commander. Before September ended, Viggers had shot down 6 additional aircraft. That autumn, Viggers bravely led a formation of 8 Dolphins into a swarm of 12 Fokker biplanes. Despite knowing the enemy had numbers and altitude, Viggers attacked anyway. Banking hard into the enemy formation, the pilot closed on the lead Fokker and opened fire, sending tracers right into its fuselage, causing the biplane to shudder, roll inverted, and tumble earthward in pieces. Only a moment later, when another Fokker swung into his tail, Viggers pulled the Dolphin into a climbing turn that the heavier German fighter simply could not match, reversed position, and sent another burst into the cockpit. The Fokker fell away, smoking. Still relentless, when a third enemy aircraft dove past him, Vickers gave chase, hammering it with fire until the pilot lost control and spun toward the ground. By the time he was given the Distinguished Flying Cross that fall, Vickers had accounted for 14 enemy aircraft, every single one of them achieved in the same Dolphin. With a total of 89 enemy aircraft destroyed by the squadron, including Ace Captain Henri Bizou with 8 victories, the squadron also experimented with oxygen equipment to help pilots endure the brutal cold and thin air at extreme altitude, mounting pressurized tanks in the cockpit to extend their operational ceiling even higher. However, the trials ended abruptly when ground tests revealed a fatal flaw. A single bullet striking an oxygen tank turned the cockpit into an incendiary bomb. For their part, the No. 79 Squadron shot down 64 enemy aircraft during its time with the Dolphin, producing the war's top 2 Dolphin aces, Captain Francis W. Gillett, an American, who claimed 20 victories in the type, and Lieutenant Ronald Bannerman, a New Zealander, who scored 17. When Gillett first climbed into the cockpit of his Dolphin, the aircraft handled nothing like the trainers he'd flown in England. Knowing the hushed gossip about the machine full well, instead of refusing to fly it, he focused on learning its quirks. The hypersensitive controls, the engine that overheated if the radiator shutters weren't adjusted constantly, and the Lewis gun that had to be reloaded mid-combat while flying with one hand. On August 3, 1918, Gillett spotted a German observation balloon floating in northern France, its crew scanning Allied positions from high altitude. The pilot dove through anti-aircraft fire, close to point-blank range, and sent incendiary rounds into the hydrogen envelope, causing it to erupt in flames, the observers leaping from the basket as fire consumed their platform. By the end of the month, he'd shot down 2 aircraft, and instead of lagging, the victories came faster than ever, with another balloon and 6 aircraft in September, and a balloon and 5 more aircraft in October. After the early days of November brought 4 more, on the morning of November 10th, Gillett flew 3 separate patrols and shot down 3 more enemy fighters before noon. Amongst the many aces in the war, Gillett's record stood apart from the usual mix of claims that filled most pilots' logbooks. Many airmen finished the war with victories marked as out of control or forced down, entries that left room for doubt. Yet Ace Gillett left none. Every single time he fired, his opponents fell in plain view of the other pilots on the patrol. All 20 of his victories were listed as destroyed, confirmed with no ambiguity at all. While many in the Royal Flying Corps eyed the Dolphin with suspicion, No. 79 Squadron soon found that the aircraft's strength extended well beyond straightforward air fighting. Once in the skies, the once weary pilots learned that when the Hispano-Suiza engine functioned as designed, the Dolphin proved capable at altitudes where most fighters struggled to climb. Above 20,000 feet, the air thinned until engines choked and pilots gasped for breath. Yet German reconnaissance aircraft, like the Rempler C-7, operated there routinely, their cameras mapping Allied positions from heights that seemed untouchable. Squadrons equipped with Dolphins were among the few units that could reach them. But not every pilot needed that much altitude to prove the Dolphin's worth. In their operational service, Dolphin squadrons were drawn into the thick of the German spring offensive of 1918, the sweeping assaults that pushed Allied units back along the Western Front. These were low, fast, dangerous flights. Pilots dropped toward the trenches to strafe infantry with machine gun fire and to release small Cooper bombs on dugouts and supply points. Racks under the fuselage carried 4 of those 25-pound bombs, turning what had been designed as a pure fighter into an improvised attack aircraft. Lieutenant Ronald Bannerman joined the newly formed No. 79 Squadron in 1918. On August 4th, while flying one of these low patrols, he spotted a Fokker D-7 stalking a British reconnaissance aircraft. He rolled in from above, held his fire until he had the range, and sent the Fokker spinning into the ground. The victories followed quickly. A dozen aircraft fell to him in August and September, most of them claimed, while No. 79 Squadron was busy sweeping over trenches and road columns rather than chasing enemy scouts. His 4th came when he flew straight through rising anti-aircraft fire to reach a hydrogen balloon, pressing the attack until it burst into flame. After a short leave, he returned to the line and added 5 more victories, bringing his total to 17. His final success came on November 4th, only a week before the armistice, the record showed 16 aircraft destroyed and 22 driven down out of control, making him the second highest scoring Dolphin ace. What set those numbers apart was the way he earned them. Bannerman's logbook recorded engine failure after engine failure, the Hispano-Suiza quitting mid-patrol and forcing him to nurse the aircraft back to base on partial power. Still refusing to give it up, not a single one of his 17 victories came above 5,000 feet. While other aces hunted high in the thinning air, where altitude meant safety and engines ran clean, Bannerman fought in the lowest and most exposed part of the front, skimming above the trenches at just a few thousand feet, where every German rifleman on the ground had a clear shot at his fuselage, where flak erupted without warning, and where a single slip could end a patrol and a life in seconds. Some pilots, like Bannerman, learned the Dolphin's language quickly. But at number 19 Squadron, another ace was discovering that the aircraft didn't yield its secrets as easily. By the time Major Albert Carter arrived at number 19 Squadron in October 1917, he was already a famous ace, known for aggressive flying that made him one of the Allies' most prolific fighter pilots. He hunted, closing to point-blank range and refusing to break off even when outnumbered. But when the Sopwith Dolphins arrived at the squadron in early 1918, Carter's shriek went silent. For 2.5 months, Carter, ever the overachiever, flew patrol after patrol without a single confirmed victory. During one engagement with German two-seaters, aircraft he should have torn apart with ease, his gun sight broke mid-combat, leaving him firing blind, while enemy observers returned fire with impunity. The frustration must have been unbearable for a pilot accustomed to dominating every fight. On the morning of March 17, 1918, 3 formations of number 19 Squadron Dolphins climbed into a bright spring sun over France, spiraling upward in wide left-hand circles that carried them clear of the training fields and casualty stations scattered across Bayeux. Major Carter led the highest formation, leveling out at 14,000 feet with 5 aircraft in tight formation, positioned 3,000 feet above the 2 groups climbing below him. Just after noon, northeast of Menin, one of the lower formations spotted a German Jasta wheeling through the sky ahead. A single enemy fighter broke from the pack and bolted west, trying to escape before the Dolphins could close the range. 2 pilots from the lower formation gave chase, closing fast and opening fire. Tracers stitched across the German fuselage, and within seconds, the aircraft erupted into flames, tumbling earthward as the pilot lost control. Then someone spotted the real threat, a massive German formation of at least 15 fighters, chasing 6 Sopwith camels eastward toward Ypres. The camels were outnumbered, running for their lives. Suddenly, the German pilots turned east and found themselves staring directly into 3 formations of Dolphins positioned between 12 and 15,000 feet over Roulet. Neither side hesitated, and the sky exploded into chaos as Dolphins and German fighters tore into each other. Aircraft banked hard, dove, climbed, reversed, spinning through the air in a furious tangle of wings and gunfire. Tracers crisscrossed the sky. Engines screamed at full throttle. Pilots yanked their aircraft through turns that blurred their vision, searching for targets, checking their tails, firing in short bursts whenever an enemy crossed their sights. After a 10-minute fight, an eternity in aerial combat, the formations finally broke apart and scattered. When 9 Dolphin pilots reached base and filed their reports, several claims came in across the squadron, and Carter accounted for 1 false D3 and sent another spinning out of control. Major Carter added 11 more victories flying the temperamental Dolphin, including his final success on May 16, 1918, when he sent an enemy fighter down in flames. 2 days later, on the 18th, Lieutenant Paul Billick of Jagdstaffel 52 caught Carter during a patrol over German-held territory. Billick's rounds tore into the Dolphin's fuselage and engine, forcing Carter to crash land behind enemy lines. The aircraft crumpled on impact, but Carter climbed out alive, only to be immediately captured by German infantry. Carter spent the next 7 months in a prisoner of war camp in Bavaria, enduring captivity while the war ground toward its conclusion. On July 18th, he received the Distinguished Service Order while still behind barbed wire. By then, the Dolphin's brief combat life was already running out of road. The RAF attempted to use the Dolphin for home defense duties, intercepting German bombers over Britain. Number 141 Squadron in Biggin Hill received the first aircraft in early 1918, but pilots disliked the type for night flying. Engineers fitted protective crash hoops above the wings, acknowledging what everyone knew. The exposed cockpit would put pilots at risk in any forced landing. The experiment was quietly abandoned. Even France, impressed with its design, planned large-scale production, powered by a 300-horsepower engine. Test pilot Harry Hawker threw the prototype through violent rolls, spins, and dives to test its limits. The aircraft proved dangerously weak and required reinforcement. By the time the upgraded Dolphin II was ready, the war had ended. On November 11, 1918, the fighting ended, and German delegates signed the armistice in a railway carriage in the forest of Compiègne, north of Paris. Their government had collapsed under food shortages, mutiny in the fleet, and a front line that could no longer hold against the Allied advance. The agreement ordered German forces to withdraw across the Rhine and grounded what remained of their air service. For the squadron's flying Dolphins, the order meant an immediate halt to offensive patrols and a slow return to the airfields that would send them home. Number 79 Squadron continued flying its Dolphins from Bickendorf near Cologne, maintaining patrols over occupied Germany until the unit disbanded in July 1919. With that final posting gone, the Dolphin disappeared from frontline service almost overnight. None of the feared cockpit accidents ever occurred, and the head-snapping rumor never amounted to anything more than anxious talk among squadrons. The Dolphin's real problems were mechanical, not structural, and its short life had more to do with overstretched engine production than any flaw in Herbert Smith's design. In the end, the fighter that gave pilots unmatched visibility, that had been ordered in the thousands and meant to change aerial technology forever, faded from memory almost as quickly as it had arrived, leaving behind only a handful of aces who remembered what it could do when everything worked as intended. For his part, Dolphin pilot Carter was finally repatriated on December 13, 1918. His final tally stood at 28 victories, 14 destroyed, 14 driven down out of control, with 7 shared downings and 20 enemy fighters among his victims. The switch to the Dolphin had done nothing to slow him down. Now, with the war over and freedom restored, Carter had survived everything the Germans could throw at him. He'd survived combat, survived being shot down, and survived German prison camps. He claimed roughly 13 of his 28 confirmed victories in the Dolphin, proof that even pilots who shifted between several aircraft could make the type work in battle. But on the morning of May 22, 1919, at a Canadian Air Force field, Carter climbed into a captured Fokker D-7 for a mock dogfight. Moments later, the top wing failed, and the aircraft fell straight into the ground, ending his life instantly. The inquiry blamed weak construction, but privately, there were suspicions that his own ground crew had tampered with the bolts. The ace who survived the Dolphin's engine failures and German bullets fell at the hands of his own men.